And yet we're talking about Pierre Poilievre, and we're talking about announcements of lists of stuff that won't get filled for 15 years.
Okay, but on...
It is so fascinating, eyes wide open, watching the liberal media machine try to rewrite history in real time. It's crazy how that works, isn't it? We've got Mark Carney taking credit for projects that he didn't approve again. And Lisa Raitt dropped a reality check so brutal that CBC practically ripped the microphone away and tried everything they could to pivot from what she just said. When all else fails, I've come to notice this, all they do is smear you. They smear conservatives, Poilievre supporters, because they really just can't beat his ideas. They've run out of facts, so then they just call you all extremists instead. That's literally the classic Ottawa playbook. I'm Jasmine Lane. Subscribe, like, follow, and comment your thoughts down below. Share this video as well. Could you imagine if this type of energy was put into our actual prime minister and the Liberal government and Mark Carney's true incompetency and failures? We might live in a totally different world.
Aaron Collins, CBC. So Chris d'Entremont, just turning back to last week, said that your party is being run like a frat house. So I'm just curious what you think he means by that, and if you think
well, I think that CBC had to be. Are you with CBC, by the way?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay, right.
So I'm just curious if you think that that could lead to more MPs leaving your caucus, and what you think he means by that.
Well, first of all, CBC has had to correct the falsehoods that they put into that story. So I encourage you to tell Canadians about the falsehoods you published and explain why you did that. But I would ask if you agree with Mr. d'Entremont, or do you believe he was telling the truth when he said, and I'm going to quote, "Now, after 6 months under a new Prime Minister who promised financial discipline, Canadians are still waiting." He said that he would be judged by the cost at the grocery store. Well, Canadians are judging him, and they are not impressed. Since the Liberals came to power, food prices have risen 40%. We have heard it many times here today. It is deliberate, and it is unacceptable. It is inhumane for a G7 country. Mr. d'Entremont said that Liberal food price inflation is inhumane. Do you believe that he was telling the truth when he said that? Yes. Oh, you can.
One asking the questions.
I did already. I already said that your report from CBC was wrong, and we have corrected the record. We put out a statement. We stand by the statement. But I have a statement here from Mr. d'Entremont. He says, since the Liberals came to power, food prices have risen in a G7 country. Do you agree with Mr. d'Entremont that Mark Carney's food price inflation is inhumane?
So again, I asked you if you thought that if what you thought Mr. d'Entremont meant by your party being run like a frat house, whether or not you thought that would lead to more MPs leaving your caucus. That's the question for you, sir.
No. So I answered your question.
And of course, the cover story is not Mark Carney or what the Liberals are doing. It is Pierre Poilievre. What do they do? Always deflect, distract, and protect. That is their goal, which is why they're running this like wildfire. And this clip is going to make you feel very frustrated. I know it did for me. Scott Raitt was asked about Poilievre's response back to these questions, and listen to this propaganda. Holy moly.
Clearly was piqued by those questions and targeted both news agencies. We're going to play a little bit of what he had to say when he was asked point blank, look, are you rethinking your style of leadership as a result? I want to get your reaction. Let's play that if we can.
My plan is to continue to lead and be the only leader in the country that's fighting for an affordable Canada.
And I want to share with you as well what Dan Albus wrote on X. I find it interesting how those who seem most obsessed with the survivability of the CPC leader tend to be lifelong Liberals, former Liberal staffers and Liberal lobbyists who were more than happy to stand behind 10 years of Trudeau. Do not believe these people.
No, in fact, when he was asked directly, are you going to reflect on your leadership style? Do you think you have lessons to learn? Are there takeaways that you're going to reflect upon? His defiant, explicit answer was no. And possibly there are people out here watching who think they are perfect. It appears that Pierre Poilievre is among them. It's such a disconnected from reality answer. No one is expecting him as the leader of the Conservative Party to say, my God, I'm in the midst of a crisis and I'm drowning. But an acknowledgement, a nod toward, look, it's been a difficult week, but here are the reasons that I feel that I'm the right choice for the party and why I think we're on the right track.
You know what's funny, though, is number one, let's say that he did do exactly what Scott Raitt claims to want. Scott Raitt would be the first person then to be posting and smearing, saying, see, he's not fit. He's not fit. Yeah, he says he has to change. Not good enough. That would be the narrative. It doesn't matter what you give these people. You can give them what they want, or you can give them what's true, and they're going to complain anyway. These people, Scott Raitt's not voting for Pierre Poilievre. Why is he commenting on Pierre Poilievre? He's not his demo. He's not his target audience. Like, honestly, wouldn't it be so much more interesting to hear somebody who is a loud and outspoken conservative supporter give their thoughts on this? That sounds way more interesting to me than listening to somebody who is not a supporter, will never vote for them, and absolutely despises them. Additionally, they aired, 15 seconds worth of Pierre Poilievre's entire 30-minute long address. Pierre Poilievre did outline quite clear why he is fit, why he is better.
And finally, it says that combined with the sizable non-budgetary financing needs, the higher deficit will substantially increase general government debt, which is forecast to be 92% of GDP in 2025, up from 88.6% in 2024, before accelerating to 98.5% by 2027, nearly double the forecast AA medium of 49.6. Now, those are a lot of numbers, but let's cut right down to it. To be a AA rated country, on average, your debt to GDP is 49.6%. Carney's on track to bring ours to nearly 100%. In other words, our debt as a share of GDP will be almost twice the size of the average AA country. That's the kind of fiscal mess that Mark Carney and the Liberals are creating. So much for he's gone from promising to be a brilliant economist to being the most costly, reckless, and risky Prime Minister in Canadian history, and that is why Conservatives will oppose it. But we not only oppose, we propose. Our proposal is to cut bureaucracy, consultants, foreign aid, corporate welfare, handouts to phony refugees, and other wasted money so we can bring down debt, taxes, and inflation. We would get rid of the industrial carbon tax to unlock the industrial engine of our nation and to reduce the price of everything made with steel, aluminum, cement, concrete, glass. That is everything that we buy. We will cap government spending for a dollar for dollar law, requiring we find $1 of savings for every new dollar of spending. We'll make this the fastest place on earth to get a building permit, repeal the anti-energy laws, use the powers in C5 to rapidly approve a pipeline to the Pacific so we can get 1 million barrels of oil to Asia every single day. We will get rid of the capital gains tax on anyone who reinvests their money in Canada to bring home the $500 billion of net investment that Mark Carney and the Liberals have sent fleeing to the United States of America. We will cut income tax so hard work pays off. We will get rid of all home building taxes, not only to provide affordable homes to the next generation, but also to bring back the 100,000 trades jobs so carpenters can swing hammers, framers can frame homes, loggers can harvest lumber, and we can build a tariff-proof industry back to life in this country. That is how we restore the promise that I enjoyed as a young Calgary kid, delivering the sun door to door in my adolescence. Is how we're going to give every single kid in this country the opportunity that we had. We're going to have opportunity and freedom for our youth, home ownership for our families, and of course, security for our wonderful seniors. That is our vision, our hopeful future, and now let's get it done.
And of course, Scott Raitt, knowing that most Conservatives aren't watching this, it's the Liberals. He's speaking to his own base, and he wants views, he wants clicks, he wants to keep that paycheck that he gets for being a political pundit on the show. He doesn't address that. He doesn't mention that at all. There's no winning.
None of that. And then again, the sort of snide remarks about the media being biased. All of it is a spotlight on his weakness. All of it is the guy who stands in the middle of the town screaming, I have no problems, and everyone is left to think, well, there's a guy who has problems. So I think that this tone, I think this message, I think this manner all backfires on Pierre Poilievre. Doesn't make him look strong, it makes him look weak. Doesn't make him look like he's in for the long haul. It makes him look like he's in some sort of short-term fight, possibly with reality.
Do you want to know who I think is in a fight with reality? Probably Scott Reid and other pundits. Actually, just take a listen to this. Lisa Raitt dropping some reality on David Cochrane, who, wow, he did not like that answer, did he?
But Lisa, just on that point, like creating that, yes, I'm on it, I've got a plan. Is that enough? Like for now, you know, that it's a priority, it's a focus, and you're seeing activity, you know, at least in a process sense, if you're not actually seeing the specific outcomes. Is that enough for people right now?
Maybe. But I'm going to put my cynical hat on right now and say that I'm not surprised the Globe and Mail got a bit of a taste as to what's in the announcement, given that Marco Rubio was in Niagara-on-the-Lake today. Nobody's talking about the fact that we didn't push him on why we can't get back to the table on negotiating a deal with the United States. Minister Anand was asked about it, and she said, I didn't bring it up because it's somebody else's file. We should be talking about that. That's an important opportunity for us to try to get back to the table. And yet we're talking about Pierre Poilievre, and we're talking about announcements of lists of stuff that won't get built for 15 years.
Okay, but on that, I mean, should the Foreign Affairs Minister be talking to the Secretary of State on trade when Ambassador Hillman's talking to Jameson Greer, Howard Lutnick, and Dom LeBlanc, Donald Trump, and Mark Carney are talking? Like, she'd get in trouble with this Prime Minister, wouldn't she? You know, and Rubio might too.
No. I would say if we take a Team Canada approach and if we encourage people to talk across the border to anybody they possibly can about the importance of the relationship, then you take every opportunity you possibly can to talk about the importance of the relationship. You don't say, I didn't bring it up at all.
Okay, we're going to have to end it there. Give Lisa the last word there because we're out of time.
Yeah, shoot. It's always out of time after you spend an entire panel smearing, speculating on rumors, you know, stirring the pot, hitting the pans, all of that stuff to distract Canadians away from the real issues. And then when somebody finally has an opportunity to address the real issues, we are out of time.
It's important to say that the annual report from the IEA sets out scenarios of what could happen globally for our energy trends. And in this report, it says that by 2050, that oil will continue to be in demand. Why that's important is that 2 years ago, the IEA said that peak oil could happen in the next 5 years, starting in 2030, and then start to decline. So a marked difference there. However, I caution, and they caution, it's a scenario saying that if climate policies aren't enhanced, that's what will be the trend up until 2050. They also point out that the IEA, which is funded in part, but the most large part by the United States, it has been under pressure from the Trump administration to put out this more conservative scenario, talking about peak oil and underscoring from that point of view that climate policies won't change the demand for oil as much as previously said.
The reason why I think that topic is so important is because that narrative that clearly is easily influenced depending on who it is that's in office and what their goals are, as they just alluded to. It's funny how they say, oh, well, you know, the thing changed, but it's important to note that it's because of the Trump administration. No mention at all that the last time that there was a report done, it was under the Biden administration when he was very much going along with all of the climate change, catastrophe, crisis, all of that stuff in order for rich people to get richer and more nations to suffer under that ideology. And that ideology has allowed our governments to shut down and hinder our resource development for the good of the planet. Yeah, we're so compassionate and nice. They always say it could be why, under Mark Carney's new list of national interest projects, all of which were already approved, some of them passed Indigenous consultations, one of them a provincial project, and another one that is well into development already, that they never, ever, ever want to expand oil. They've actually, I've heard people use this argument towards me that peak oil, it's not worth it. Why bother? Why bother? Honestly, though, even if it's just for a little while, like, why bother? utilizing something that you have that will employ your people and also improve your economy by the tens of billions annually. Nah, why bother? It's supposed to be done in the next 6 years anyway. You mean to tell me that we could have enough money to pay off our debt and you don't want to bother because peak oil, which is decided by typically lobbyists and administrations. Really? Alrighty then. But that lie has allowed our governments to spend billions of dollars on international climate schemes, on carbon credits, on global climate funds, UN conferences, Davos panels, and global compliance frameworks. But they won't spend a freaking penny, or they spend so little to actually fix sewage systems dumping pollution into our lakes. They won't regulate the microplastics bleeding out of our own wastewater treatment plants. They won't modernize fishing gear that's shedding plastic into our oceans. And they won't stop eco-friendly products from disintegrating into toxic microplastics on our dinner tables. And to give you a few examples of this coming from Global News, lobster with a side of microplastics. Canadian researchers find traces of polyester PVA in meat. A new study from Nova Scotia's Dalhousie University found microplastics in 100% of the lobsters that they tested, leading researchers to suggest that plastic is more prevalent than most seafood lovers may think. But no, we're not going to do anything for that. We just want to fund, another couple $100 billion overseas to help other nations be carbon friendly. What the heck? They always say to trust the experts on these sorts of things. So this morning, I actually had a call with one. And on that note, I am joined by Kim Bright, the founder of Brightcore. And I really want to start off, Kim, with this story of this lobster study. When you hear researchers that have found microplastics in 100% of the samples coming out of our lobsters, what is the first thing that goes through your mind as somebody who studies health?
Well, to me, that is just putting more and more microplastics and nanoplastics into our own body. Who doesn't love a good lobster? But this is making the lobster sick. It's going to ultimately make us sick. You've got so much pollution already in the waters, from just the things that that corporate puts in there, what they dump in there. And so it really is changing. It's changing everyone's health on a global level. It's not just locally there, because it's going to go into, like you've got the Don River there, and it's loaded up with microplastics, right? 500 billion microplastics into Lake Ontario last year, I think.
It's the equivalent of 18 cars worth of microplastics into Lake Ontario every year. Like, how is that even possible in a developed country, honestly?
I know it racks the brain, doesn't it? But this has been going on for a long time. Since the 1950s it started, and it's just getting worse and worse. And of course, Lake Ontario kind of feeds into Lake Erie, and then it goes into the other Great Lakes, right? And it just goes everywhere. And so it's just very, very scary.
One thing that really stood out to me, and it's not talked about nearly enough, is that PVA plastic from biodegradable detergent pods and stuff like that, like showing up in lobster meat, showing up in our lakes and our rivers. Do you think that companies could be misleading the public with all of these so-called eco-friendly products when we see end results like this?
One word, yes. And what really drives me crazy and makes my blood boil is countries aren't spending money on cleaning up their own environments. They're spending money on foreign environmental aid, and they have to take care of their own people in their own areas. I mean, in previous administrations, we had similar problems in the United States, and it just makes my blood boil, because we're ruining the environment, and now, hopefully we're going to, keep it cleaned up. And with RFK Jr. and his focus. But the microplastics, people have to understand this. They're not only detrimental to the ecosystems, but they are ultimately to our health. And that's just the tip of the iceberg with Lake Ontario having the microplastics, because they are everywhere. They're in our food, our drinking water. 94% of U.S. tap water and bottled water worldwide have microplastics and nanoplastics. Nanoplastics you can't even see. 88% of our meat, our seafood, as you mentioned, the lobster, Other protein sources, including tofu, fake meat, it's there, 88%. It's in the air we breathe. Do you know that the average person is inhaling 68,000 microplastic particles a day?
I actually didn't know that. That is so shocking.
And we start with a new study on the impact of microplastics, which found human brains contained as much plastic as a plastic spoon, which is up 50% from 2016.
What we're finding is in the brains of people who have dementia, there's actually higher amounts of microplastics. So essentially, these microplastics, or these tiny little particles of plastics, are crossing the blood-brain barrier, and they're depositing into our brain. And they're being correlated with increased risk of neurodegenerative diseases like dementia, possibly linked to autism and other things that affect the brain. There's also evidence showing increased risk of stroke, and increase inflammation overall. So I have always said, listen, there's no way to avoid microplastics entirely unless you're going to live in a bubble. And by the way, that bubble couldn't be a plastic bubble. It'd have to be a glass bubble.
You know, our brains are now 99.5% human and 0.5% plastic. And so many people don't understand that if you have microplastic plaque, which you do get in your arteries and veins, you're 4.5% or 4.5 times more likely to die from heart attack or stroke. So this is just crazy. I mean, we're ingesting 6 times more microplastics than we did in 1990. And trust me, everybody now has microplastics in their arteries. And these microplastics aren't affecting us just on the inside.
You know, I'm really curious for the average person sitting at home, whether they're eating seafood or just breathing air, what does that actually mean for their body? You touched on, you know, some of the risks, but in general, what are some very tangible things or that we've noticed in studies and research when it comes to humans having such a high level exposure to these?
Well, I think, you know, if it's in your brain, that's going to cut down your brain's ability to function properly. It's also been linked with so many studies to accelerated aging. And there's emerging research from in vitro and animal studies that show microplastics contribute to premature skin aging. You know, the primary mechanisms involve inducing oxidative stress, chronic inflammation that damages our skin cells and our tissues. And they just, you know, with so much inflammation and also hormone disruption, you have all kinds of problems going on, cellular damage everywhere. And when your cells are damaged, your organs are damaged, skin barrier dysfunction. Microplastics are really slowly killing us from the inside out. But there are measures that we can take to stop this from happening.
You know, excuse me, I was going to ask, if microplastics and pollutants are everywhere, what is it that people can actually do to support their body and their gut?
Well, you know, BPA is the most toxic chemical in plastic, and it is degraded by Bacillus pumilus, which is a unique strain of bacteria that's found in kimchi. Kimchi's been around for centuries. It's from Korea. And there was another study in 2025 that showed 2 other lactobacillus strains that are found in kimchi as well that actually draw in, absorb, and excrete the microplastics in vivo. So that's Bacillus parkasii and Bacillus plantarum. So this is very exciting news that we can actually eat kimchi and it will actually help remove the microplastics. And, you know, we've had a war going on in our gut, people, since we were born between our good and bad bacteria. And in a recent study, kimchi was also found to reduce blood glucose, triglycerides, blood pressure, and heart disease is the #1 killer. It's a contributing factor of heart disease, well known, is obesity. And there's studies out there that show that eating kimchi on a daily basis can actually reduce your body fat by 31.8%. So this is another health benefit of eating kimchi. You know, there's just so many health benefits, and we wanted to make these benefits available, you know, for people to consume on a daily basis. We wanted to make it convenient. We wanted to create something that if it were in capsules, we thought, well, they'll take that every day. A lot of people don't like the way kimchi tastes or smells. They don't like, you know, and they won't eat it every day, but in a capsule,
I feel personally
they will.
attacked.
Okay. Well, that's why we created Kimchi One, because you don't have to deal with the odor, the taste. Also, it's low in sodium, and a lot of people are dealing with, sodium. They need to be on low sodium diets. So store-bought is high in sodium, but it's 100% made in the USA. It's all natural, non-GMO. Kimchi has over 900 unique probiotics. And I will tell you that we need to have diversity in our gut if we are going to stay healthy. 70 to 80% of our immune system is in our gut. And so if we don't take care of our gut and we let the balance, you should have about 80 to 85% of the good guys in your gut. The rest can be the funguses, the parasites, the molds. Those are there for a reason. God put them there for a reason, to take the body down when we're ready to finally let it go and return it back to the earth. But nobody wants that in activity right now. They want to live and be healthy. So we've got so many success stories about Kimchi One. People that had problems with their digestion, their regularity, they're now going to the bathroom normally. We've got people that had problems with their immune system. They were sick all the time. They don't get sick as much anymore, or if at all. And also as we age, and our gut touches everything in our body. It is affecting our heart, our brain, our skin, our hair. And people tend to see their hair thinning, their hair falling out, going bald in places, and they see new wrinkles. So kimchi is well known. And has so many studies showing that hair grows back, it grows back thicker, the wrinkles start to disappear, skin is very healthy again. I mean, I'm almost 71 and this is all my natural hair.
Get out of here.
This is not, what do you call those extensions? This is me for real. This is my real skin. I don't use Botox. I don't use fillers. I don't do all that. This is me naturally. So I think it makes sense to take care of our gut and to have healthy skin, healthy hair, healthy immune system.
Where would somebody, how do people go about getting their hands on this?
Well, we can offer your viewers today a special so they can get started. Get 25% off your order of Kimchi One today by using the code Jasmine. Go to mybrightcore.com/Jasmine or call for up to 50% off and free shipping to 888-733-9420. Now, I'm an educator. I've been helping people for almost 50 years with their health. So I want you to call in. We can make sure this is the right product for you, answer your questions, and the first 100 callers are going to get a free bottle of vitamin D3 plus K2. And by the way, Jasmine, we do ship to Canada. I know you're up there in Canada. So if you want the best rates and deals, give us a call. Again, that number, 888-733-9420.
Thank you so much, Kim Braitt, the founder of Brightcore, for really helping us out today and understanding the impacts of all of this.
Thanks for having me, Jasmine. Have a beautiful day.
I don't know about you, but I just feel so frustrated by all of this theatrical, we're saving the planet, we're so good for everybody, except for you, the voter, the taxpayer. We're going to use your tax dollars to do all these things across the globe, but never to use them here where you really need them. We're going to keep shutting down all of these things that would really help us because we don't want to admit our own incompetency and our own failure. Like Canada doesn't have a climate crisis. We have an incompetence crisis. That's what it is. And I think every single one of us should be really upset by these stories with the lobsters, by these stories with the Don River in Toronto, and how bad that is for us. And the fact that our government doesn't do anything about it. Ridiculous. I'm Jasmine Lane. Subscribe, like, follow, and comment your thoughts down below. Share this video as well, and I will talk to you tomorrow.